Let's unbox the Micro Galaxy Squadron, the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter.
Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. I have another recent arrival from the Micro Galaxy Squadron line to unbox today. This one is the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter. You can see that this one is from Series 4. Sadly, Series 4 never seemed to make it to New Zealand. We hunted and hunted, we never spotted this one locally. We did get Series 5, so we just finally came to the conclusion that we were just never going to find it. We picked up 3 from Series 4 from a stockist in Australia. We picked up Gold Leader's Y-Wing, the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter, and Vulture Droid. These just arrived recently, so of course I wasn't going to waste any time in opening them up. I've opened up Gold Leader's Y-Wing, and of course next up is the N-1 Starfighter. I recently opened up the N-1 Starfighter from the Hot Wheels Starship Select line. Really keen to get this one out and compare the two side by side. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, we'll get the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter out of the packaging. We've got a little bit of assembly to do here as well. We'll check out all of the details, but first let's take one last look at the packaging. The Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter is part of the Starfighter class of vehicles from the Micro Galaxy Squadron line, so we have the fairly standard Starfighter class packaging with a cardboard backing card and a very large plastic bubble on the front. Of course, I did import this from overseas. I am quite impressed that it did arrive not crumpled. Because there isn't really much structure to protect crushing of this plastic, I was kind of assuming that it was going to arrive a little bit dented. Of course, we always want collectibles to arrive as nice as possible. I knew I was going to be opening it, so I wasn't going to be too upset, but I am really impressed that this one arrived okay. We can see that we've got the N1 mounted sort of twisted to the side there a little bit, so we can see all of the details across the front. We can see that the tail of the Starfighter is cut off. The insert picture here shows we're going to attach that piece once we open it. A little bit of a shame for people that like to keep their NGS boxed, because of course it does look a little bit cut off, but because we have standardized packaging, each Starfighter has to kind of come in parts if they are too big to fully fit within the confines of this packaging style. We've got the Micro Galaxy Squadron logo here on the front, and on the silver stripe we have the name for this particular ship, the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter, and this is number 0084. We have a yellow side stripe here for Series 4. All of my ones that I purchased in New Zealand were just written in English. This one, imported from overseas, has 2 languages there. We can see we've got nice big plastic windows going all the way around, so it is nicely lit. We can see the details really clearly. We don't have sort of cardboard providing a little bit of shadowing there. For this particular vehicle, we have one figure here, noted as Din Djarin Beskar version. Of course, this is from Series 3. We can see he's got his shiny Beskar armor. Technically, there is a second figure. We have Grogu, who was already mounted inside his little bubble. And when I turn this around and check a look at the back, it notes that Grogu is not removable. He is permanently mounted in there. I was wondering how they were going to do that, because he is so small, so much smaller than an astromech, which of course is usually packaged as a separate minifigure that we can take in and out. So yes, he is in there, which of course is important, but we can't take him out. We can see from this back diagram that we can put Din Djarin figure inside the cockpit that opens. We've got some landing gear here. We also have our collectible cut out and keep a blueprint card here, which is great if you want to save a bit of space and discard your packaging. You can cut this out. I always think this is kind of a little fun memento. And of course, this is the Starfighter class, so we can see some of the other Starfighter class vehicles from Series 4. We have Gold Leader's Y-Wing, TIE Bomber, and unfortunately the chase vehicles are 2 other X-Wings. I'm finding it a little bit frustrating that so many of the X-Wings are chase vehicles. I really love X-Wings. I want to add more of them to my collection. Because I was not able to find this particular Series 4 locally, it's going to be very hard for me to ever source these, because of course the chase and rare vehicles do go for a lot on the secondary market, and that is going to be my only option at this point. Overall, the packaging for this is really nice. I'm still impressed it arrived looking as intact as it is. We've got some X-Wings on the backing card here in the background. Of course, we do see the Mandalorian encountering X-Wings in Series 3 of the show, where he's getting a little bit told off for how fast he is flying his new souped up N-1 Starfighter, so I think that that's kind of fun. It does look cool, but of course I think it's going to look a little bit better fully assembled. So let's get it out and check out all of the details. So now I have the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter out of the packaging. We can see we've got 2 pieces to assemble there. But first, I want to take a quick look at the Mandalorian himself. I love the little minifigures included in the Micro Galaxy Squadron line. I'm always impressed with the level of detail and paint on these figures. So of course, we have him in his Season 3 appearance, complete with a silvery Beskar armor there as well. And on the back, we've got a little bit of a blueprint style liner showing us all of that amazing minifigure detail. So let's pop them out of the little plastic tray so we can take a closer look. So of course in Season 3 we have a slightly different cape. It's a little bit pushed off to the side because of course he now has a matching jetpack, which is really cool. We can see it painted in silver there to match the rest of his armor. He's got his shiny silver armor helmet there, lots of silver plates on the rest of him. We've got different tones of brown, and then it looks like a pretty much straight black for the cape there as well. Of course he's too small, the helmets don't move, nor are they removable here, but because we have to sit them in a cockpit, they do have some minor articulation. We can move his arms up so he can hold controls, and we can get him into a seated position. So as expected, his jetpack and attached cape is removable because you can see that it's going to hang down and affect his ability to sit straight down. You can see it extends longer than he does. So we can take this off, and you can see we've got sort of parts that connect over his shoulders, and we have an attachment peg there in the back which is going to hold it onto his back. So because I want to put him in his cockpit, he's going to look like this. We've got a bit of a peg hole there in the back, so hopefully he's going to sit fairly well close up against his pilot seat there and sort of hide that hole in the back. And I'm probably going to use this plastic tray to store this very small accessory because I really don't want to lose this. It is kind of funny that we've got these figures that are kind of designed to go in the cockpit, but they come with accessories that don't really work sitting in the cockpit. But I do appreciate that we've got sort of the ability to make them accurate, so we can sort of pose them next to the ships if you like to do that as well. So just going to put him off to the side because of course now is the time to get this fully assembled. So let's just take a quick look because wow, something about the silver of this shining under the lights is just absolutely amazing. So let's get it assembled. We can see that we've got a sort of a very triangular one orientation, a connection point, which is good because I'm always a little bit worried when attaching pieces where there's kind of like no going back once you've clicked them in. This does look sort of very similar. This was kind of greebly details all over it, and I was a little bit worried about snapping it in the wrong way. We can see that we've got a triangular attachment point there, and the attachment post is actually quite long, which I'm really hoping will get this nice and straight. That is always a concern when attaching pieces that are so long, that if they have a little bit of a shallow connection point, they're always just going to be perhaps not quite as dead straight as if they were fully formed as a central piece there. So I'm hoping this will snap in. I get the feeling that this is going to be a one-way trip. I'm not going to be able to undo this once it is in place. I'm hoping this isn't going to be too hard to connect in. So got a little bit of resistance here, but this part here I think is going to be the sort of really snapping in point. So let's see if I can, there we go. That feels like that is very firmly in there. I can just wiggle it a little bit to the left and right, but pulling on that doesn't feel like that's going to come out. So let's just take a look and see how straight that looks. That looks pretty good. I know that some concerns are when you've got these really long spindly bits that if they're packaged a little bit askew, then resting on that internal packaging will misshapen them over time. But because this one was separate, it really wasn't sort of leaning on anything. I like how dead straight that is. It's so long and extended, you really are going to notice it if it isn't straight. So I really like that. Let's just move him out of the way. So now we've got him fully assembled, and he looks, it's kind of a small extension really because it's so thin, but it already makes this whole ship look so much bigger by comparison because it's extending so much longer. Really, really cool. I love the N-1 Starfighter. I am desperately keen to get my hands on an iconic Phantom Menace era yellow and silver version, but of course I absolutely love the way that it appears in the Mandalorian series with Din Djarin's souped up hot rod version, because of course we've got all of these sort of extra add-ons, like this very sort of hot rod inspired extra sort of engine component here on the top, and of course the additional weaponry. We've got all of these exposed detail areas as well, where we can sort of really see where all of the panels have been removed to sort of add on extra details. Absolutely cool. So let's go over the details. I got this one online, so I was not able to sort of check the paintwork myself. I'm always a little bit anxious because I do like to, when I have the opportunity, to compare different ships side by side in my local store. Of course, I only got this one in the mail, so I wasn't able to check it out before I purchased it. But on the whole, there isn't anything that's really standing out to me. Of course, when you've got such a shiny silver finish, anything that's kind of a little bit off is really going to catch your eye. Under the lights, I can see maybe two little spots that are going to grab my attention. Not in a hugely negative way. I think we have a small, very minimal scratch to the silver right here. But because we've got a little bit of sort of weathering, it's not too bad. I can sort of feel it with my fingernail. So I believe that is a scratch to the silver finish. And I'm not sure if it's weathering or glue. But when I look at the ship in this perspective, I can see the light catching on this patch here on the nose. Because there is sort of a little bit of sort of a darker patch around the sort of the laser cannons here on the front. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to be weathering or I'm getting some sort of glue residue. Sometimes I notice this on Funko Pop vinyl figures, that there is sort of like a white dust around glue attachment points. And sometimes you can kind of wipe it off with your fingers. So I'm just testing to see if that might be the case here. Might sort of go in with like a Q-tip or something and see if that will come off, because I can just kind of see this. I think that might be glue or just something that has disturbed the silver finish. It's kind of funny. In some light, I don't see that at all. And then others, when I sort of tip it in the light, I can see that. It's not a deal breaker. Of course, it isn't supposed to be the perfect chrome finish of the original Naboo Starfighter. Overall, it's not really drawing my attention, and it probably looks a little bit more prominent on camera than it does in person, to be honest. Looking at my camera, I can sort of see it a little bit more clearly than I can with my own eyes. So, of course, it's not going to be under lights like this on display. It's going to be on my bookshelf. I absolutely love the two-tone silver details here for the exposed engine parts. It is a darker metallic silver as opposed to sort of the more brilliant white silver used for the body. And the paintwork here is very clean in these recessed sections. I really like all of that sort of deep engine detail work. And of course, we've got that really fun sort of fading ombre effect on the engines here, where it's really dark close in and it fades out to the silver there. Absolutely fantastic. I love that. Really cool. And of course, we've got these sort of little yellow elements here. I think this is really fun. Of course, the Mandalorian has some yellow paintwork on his original Razor Crest. And of course, the N-1 is originally yellow. So I like that there's a little bit of nod to both of those. We've got yellow here on the wings and near the cockpit and towards the back. That kind of echoes the yellow paintwork on his Razor Crest and of course the original yellow color. I just think that that's really fun there. They aren't perfect sort of yellow rectangles. They have some weathering to it, but they are done very nice and tidy. I really like that. Oh, absolutely fantastic. I love just getting these Micro Galaxy Squadron ships in hand. They're just seeing all of the detail work, all of the sort of deep sort of engines and all of these little recessed sections. It looks like it's made of so many small components all assembled, like sort of the old kit set models. You know, we've got all the little engine components that were actually used to kit bash and make the Star Wars studio models that ILM built for the films. So I'm just impressed when they're able to get that level of detail with something that's all molded in big chunks. This isn't actually assembled out of all tiny little engine components, but it looks like it has, with all of the detail work that they're able to get in here. I can see, you know, the seam lines here, so I know that this part is one part, this is another part, but the detail that goes into it just looks incredible. Let's take a look at the underside. Less detail here, but of course they are going to have to reference the original sort of design from the show. So we've got that sort of additional engine on here on the underside. We've got additional weaponry loaded on here as well. And it's mostly silver. I don't see much in the way of weathering. Of course, we've got some darker colors here for the added weaponry. Some very prominent exposed screws on the underside here as well. We can see that we've got 3 on the underside of the main body and 2 on each of the engine components there as well. We've got 3 landing gear, 1 here in the center and 1 on each engine as well. And I don't know if this is supposed to be there. It's kind of in the same place. We've got yellow markings here on the top. And then if I flip it over, I've got a yellow dot here and 2 yellow dots here. So I don't know if that's actually supposed to be there or that's just an accident. I don't really see the underside of Mandalorian's N-1 that much to notice if there are some very small flecks of yellow paint on the underside. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm not sure if that is just kind of accidentally there or they're being really, really accurate to the original model there. And of course, we've got the sort of made in China Jazware's Lucasfilm stamps here on the underside as well. Kind of large, but again, they have to put it on there somewhere because this is a licensed toy. We've still got a little bit of detail work under here, but yeah, much more plainer on the underside. And of course, some of the ships in the Micro Galaxy Squadron 9 have a lot of weathering. I like that we haven't really got much here. I think this one definitely did need to look shiny. Not necessarily clean, but definitely shiny. So I like that we don't have, sometimes we get those sort of pale gray washes, just a dull. I don't really see that here. So I am glad about that. I think it just looks just the right amount of shiny. And of course, it's not really a true sort of chrome vac metallized finish, but I think it's just a really good level of metallic silver paint. Now, of course, we have to look at Grogu. I absolutely love the fact that we've got him there in the little dome. I was wondering how they were going to do it because this is so small. Normally, of course, this would be an astromech port for the original N-1 Starfighters, but of course, Palimoto has edited it and created this little passenger port for Grogu to sit in. The bubble here doesn't move. And he's pretty well fixed. He's not going to rattle around. We can see Grogu sculpted in there. He's kind of got his left hand up like he is tapping on the bubble there as we see him on the show. He doesn't appear to have any facial details painted. He just looks like he is green for his skin and a one single brown color for his sort of tunic that he's wearing there as well. So he kind of has the appearance like he has his eyes closed because he doesn't have little black dots painted in there. It's a little bit hard to focus because he's so small in there, but I think that it is really important that we have him in there. We can see the clear cockpit where we're going to put the Din Djarin figure in there shortly. So now that we've got this assembled, let's get Din Djarin into place as well, because then we'll really get the sense of how this looks. I like how clear this is. We can really see all the way into the cockpit. So of course, we've got a little bit of a thumb lever here. Let's see, that wasn't too hard. Sometimes they are quite a wrestling match to click open. That doesn't open a long way. Mine kind of hits about here, but this should be plenty of space to get him in there. I don't see any different additional paint here. We've got a nice deep section there to get his legs into. But for the sculpting in the cockpit, we've got some details here sort of around the flight controls. We've got sort of a little bit of a padded chair, but I don't see any additional painted details in there. So we've now got the little Din Djarin figure in his seated position. Let's kind of scoop his boots in there, and we can get him seated in there. So you can see he sits up against his seat pretty well. I'm hoping his hands are going to fit under the cockpit okay, because he's kind of got them open. There we go. He looks pretty good in there because we can see him quite clearly. Some Star Wars Starship designs have got sort of big canopy struts and things like that that do kind of start to obscure the character inside. This one, of course, is a very sleek sort of domed bubble, so we can really see the figure inside. Really nice. And I can't, you know, I don't even notice that he isn't wearing his jetpack or his cape, because he does sit up against his cockpit seat very nicely and tight there. I don't see that glaring big hole in his back. Because of course, one of the big selling points is the fact that these come with scale little figures to put in there. It just kind of adds a little bit of something. Of course, many of the vintage era die-cast vehicles had little plastic figures kind of glued inside the cockpits there. It does kind of take me back to those vehicles as well. Oh, absolutely fantastic. I like that these laser cannons look like separate pieces attached over the top. I think it just gives us a really nice definition there. And they look like they're made out of a dark metallic plastic. Really nice. Very cool. We've got deep sort of engine intakes here at the front. They are accented with that same sort of dark metallic color here, there. And then, of course, we've got that sort of extra weaponry attached in that same color as well. And then all the way from the back, we can see the engines out the back. I really like the painted effect here on the engines. Really cool. Okay, let's get the landing gear down. This can be tricky. I do worry about these sorts of things. I have had some where I've actually had to kind of get, like, you know, a screwdriver in there. So let's see how tricky these ones are going to be to open. Okay, let's see. I can get that one out. Oh, that one clicks open very nicely. These ones do look like they're going to be a little bit tighter. Let's give these ones a go. Okay, I can get that one's, oh, that one's very stiff. Okay, let's see if I can get that one with my thumb. There we go. Okay, that one was very stiff. Okay, here's hoping this one's a little bit better. Okay, let's see, I can lift it and then, oh, why are they so stiff? Okay, let's see if I can push that. Very stiff. The tread on these is actually really sort of, there we go. It's quite a sort of a rough thing. I know they're trying to be accurate, but it's actually a really rough thing to sort of try and grab with your fingers. But there we go. Generally sort of leaves a bit of a mark on my thumb trying to get the landing gear up. But now we've got all three of the landing gear extended, because of course they don't come with flight stands. So if you don't have a third-party display stand, you're going to want to display it with the landing gear down. So now we can see how this is probably going to look like on my display shelf. And of course it looks pretty cool. I do kind of wish that we had, you know, a display stand to put them up like that, but there are lots of third-party ones made by avid fans, so I might have to investigate one of those in the future. I think this looks pretty cool. I am just really happy with how straight each of these extended pieces is. I think it is so important. You know, I can always tell if something's just not really quite straight. And I'm not really going to get out the calipers and measure everything, but to my eye, these look as straight as I could hope for. Very, very nice. Overall, really happy. Of course, it's always a risk buying things online. You don't know if you're going to get a damaged box or a damaged vehicle. I've generally had pretty good luck with my Micro Galaxy Squadron. I have had one with some massive construction flaws where there was too much glue and I couldn't actually assemble it correctly. There's always a risk of something like that going wrong, because of course you can't see it until you open it. But overall, I'm really happy with the paintwork on this one. I think it's really good. Nothing's broken. I can assemble it fully. So earlier I mentioned that I had recently unboxed the Hot Wheels Starship Select N-1, and being I know they're not exactly close in terms of scale, but they are the sort of other significant, popular, ongoing Star Wars vehicle line. So I am curious, now that I have both of them, let's compare them side by side. So here I have the Hot Wheels Starships Select Mandalorians N-1 here on the left, and the Micro Galaxy Squadron version here on the right. And of course, these aren't the same price point, but they are from very popular vehicle lines, and we can see that there is a big size difference here, and this one does include a flight stand. So one little note you can kind of see on mine, this one was slightly bent in the package. I have a little bit of a curve. I really like the fact that this one is dead straight. That is something I think would be even more noticeable on a larger scale. And of course, I kind of miss the fact that the Micro Galaxy Squadron one, it doesn't include a display stand. I really like the way that I can kind of get some really cool flight moves. So something that I noted when I opened this one was the fact that we don't have plastic for the cockpits for the Hot Wheels line, and they paint their cockpits with a gloss black to kind of hide the fact that there is no interior, which generally looks fine. You can see it used here for the cockpit. What does look odd on this particular starship is the black used for Grogu's dome. It kind of looks like a astromech dome, which of course in the original N-1 Starfighter, this is an astromech. So something about this doesn't look like a bubble, it looks like an astromech head. And I think that that is a big improvement on the Micro Galaxy Squadron one, where we clearly have clear plastic bubbles used for the cockpit and Grogu's dome. And of course, it really does help having Grogu himself in there. So that is a big difference between these two. Of course, there is just a lot of detail, but there's something about the two-tone sort of metallic silver and all of the detail in the engine work and the exposed paneling of this one that I think just looks a little bit cooler compared to the Hot Wheels one. I know it is hard to compare something when we're dealing with two very different scales, and of course this one is metal, this one is fully plastic, but there's just something about the exposed engine sections of the Micro Galaxy Squadron one that looks so much cooler when I compare them side by side. Just that sort of extra level of detail. Of course, the scale really helps there. And we can see that this one does actually have a little bit of a wash on it, which was what I was kind of maybe expecting on this one, because I had recently opened this one and there is a sort of a dulling light grey wash. We can really see it particularly here in behind Grogu's dome. We really see that there's a lot of weathering there. So I was kind of interested to see how much or how very little there was going to be weathering on this one. And I kind of like it without a wash over it. I do really like that. Of course, I really wish I had a display stand for this one. But overall, as much as I absolutely love the Hot Wheels line, personally for me, if I was in that hypothetical conundrum of only being able to add one to my collection, I gotta say the Micro Galaxy Squadron I think wins it for me on this one, just in terms of the detail. It's hard when you're comparing a different scale. The larger something is, the more fine detail you can have on it. But just the coloring, the finish, the fact that I can see Grogu in his dome really does make it sort of win on a few points there. And of course, my one does unfortunately have that subtle curve to its tail. I feel like the tail on this one, I don't know if it's very hard to compare. I feel like it's longer on this one compared to the body than this one is. Just looking at the two, I feel like, I don't know, I'd have to sort of do a comparison study on the actual scale and length of it. But something about this one just feels a little bit more accurate being so long. I don't know. And of course, this one has landing gear, so I can put it in a landed position. The Hot Wheels Starship Select do not have any landing gear because they come with a flight stand instead. So if you want to sort of rest it down to do a bit of a diorama, it just sits there. It doesn't have any landing gear that can pop down. I do display my Hot Wheels ships on their included stands. I do think they look better on their stands because they don't have landing gear. But overall, I was really keen to see how well these two looked side by side. of course, I'm glad I do not have to make the decision of which one to buy, because I do love them both, as I do all of the Star Wars collectibles that I add to my collection. Every time I get to unbox something, it's an exciting event. It's like Christmas every day. I get to open up a Star Wars collectible. It is always a lot of fun. Even if you get something with a small flaw, it's still just a representation of an element of Star Wars that I enjoy so much. I absolutely loved the reveal that the Mandalorian was going to get a souped up hot rod version of the N-1 Starfighter. I was just so excited. I love this ship. I love this version of this ship in the Mandalorian. I hope we'll perhaps get to see more of it than we saw the Razor Crest, because I just love the ship and I don't want to see it meet its demise anytime soon. I hope we see lots of it in episodes to come. This was a fantastic unboxing. I'm really happy with it. Always a little bit of an anxious wait. For any international collectors, you will know the feeling of getting excited because you finally bought something, and then that anxious wait of, I want it to arrive quickly, I want it to arrive safe, and I want it to arrive as best condition as possible. So all of those things worked out well for me. It arrived quickly, the box wasn't damaged, and the figure inside looks fantastic. So this has been a very exciting day for me, adding another Micro Galaxy Squadron Star Wars starship to my collection. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and had a lot of fun. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again really soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Micro Galaxy Squadron fan, I recently unboxed Gold Leader's Y-Wing. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as our whole Micro Galaxy Squadron unboxing playlist. This is the way.